So, little intro. I'm Anouk Schoorts. I was born and raised abroad because my parents live in development aid. So I've lived close to smallholder farmers and seen their challenges and love for the land from close by. I see the earth as my advisor, as my confidant from time to time, and also as my doctor. I'm a big fan of plants and their medicinal capabilities. I'm not talking about mushrooms. I'm talking about mate, green tea, and ashwagandha and that sort. Um, and I'm amazed every day if we look at what the soil, what the planet can bring about, and how that pushes us to to health and to a better food system. And so I'm very grateful for the invitation today. I reckon that I step into a kind of crowd a bit different from my own. So I come more with a philosophical approach and an investment strategy rather than science-based measurements for the soil. So don't ask me those questions. I would love to be able to answer them, but I rely on you for those. Now, I've been assisting and helping families manage their wealth for over a decade. And currently I do so in a capacity as investment director for the Nest Family Office. As Koen mentioned, family office might require a little bit of a, hence my joke, a bit of a context. And so it does not mean that you bring your kids to work, although some might do so. I would not recommend it. Family office means, as Koen mentioned, it is a private wealth management fund that serves the purpose of managing financial and personal affairs for one or many families. That's a distinction between a single family office and a multi-family office. So we are, the Nest is a single family office launched by Elster Mote, our CEO, in January 2021, in a reflection of how to structure her personal and financial affairs for the next generation, but then also thinking about what if the world goes down the drain, what will be my next generation with money, because it won't serve much if there's nothing to eat. So what we are, how we were launched was as a, other side. There we go. As an impact investor. Now, what does impact investing mean? Impact investing means that we blend purpose with profit. It lies in a variety of green zones between traditional investing, that is seeking merely financial returns, and traditional philanthropy, that is seeking, that is giving without seeking any returns. And so where an impact investor distinguishes itself, I mean, and I don't want to sound arrogant at all, it's kind of like just to categorize it a little bit to make a point clear, is that where an impact investor is bridging between intentionality, financial returns, and impact returns. And so impact returns requires that we are able to measure the impact. Now, measuring impact is a big challenge. That's also why we are here today. And at the Nest, what we've tried to do and what we're trying to do, because generally we're still quite young, is to measure the processes and measure the practices in order to then at some point be able to aggregate those in measuring the outcomes. 4 years is way too short in the bigger scheme of things to start talking about outcomes. And because there are so many different baselines and so many different scenarios, especially with a complex system such as the soil, it is very tricky to just say we need to get to a certain point. Because many of those, whether it is carbon, whether it's biodiversity, whether it's water, we don't yet know what the ideal evolution is, and it depends so much on external factors such as climate or what crop we're putting in, et cetera, et cetera. So you see here let's say, the variety of shades of green between traditional investing and traditional philanthropy. And so what that means for us is we do not do traditional investing in the sense that we always come from an angle of what is the intention behind it. Even with our bank portfolios, what we call listed equities, so shares on the stock exchange or funds that are listed on the stock exchange. Even those, we're working closely with our bankers and with our intermediaries to push them as much as possible as taking into account a values alignment ESG perspective. But for many of the listed equities, it's still very tricky to start talking about impact first or impact driven. And I find it difficult to talk about impact, but it covers the load. But also these days, it's such a hyped term that you don't really know anymore what it means. By definition, we're breathing, so we have an impact. But so we range everything that we do. So listed equities, third parties, private equity, startups, and the foundation are all managed internally by the team at the Nest. And so to our real assets. Real assets, what does that mean? Basically farmland. Farmland, or to support, we have a farm in Doornik, Tournai, close to the French border, that is fully regen organic. And I think, I don't know whether it has been shared or not, but so it'll be, the transition over the years will be shown. And so it's fully regen organic. We're expanding that farm. We're also highly renovating it to be able to accommodate people to spend the night and really live in the food system. So feel free to join us there. It might be a little bit of a ruin at the time, but in a year and a half's time, we hope that we can accommodate you comfortably. And there, the purpose is really to prove that regenerative organic agriculture works at scale. And so we also try to enlarge the farm. Everything which is more on the impact objectives or key side, so more on the right-hand side for the impact, is where we could consider buying farmland to put at the disposal of farmers. Farmland prices are massive due to speculation very often. And so we try to see how we can solve the access to farmland for farmers. There's beautiful initiatives in the Netherlands, like Lenteland, which you might be aware of, or Landgenoten in Belgium. And so those companies are aggregating farmland to then put at the disposal of young farmers, also to deal with different lease structures. So now comes the juggling a little bit, so making sure that I cover everything that I wanted to say. Now, impact investing for us means that we come from an impact philosophy. We started from a food as medicine approach. Food as medicine, why? Because we believe that food is the start for health for people and planet. Now, as we started identifying our goals and where we wanted to go towards, we realized that there's still a lot of hurdles to be solved for and to be met if we talk about food as medicine. So we enlarged our scope and we said we want to support the transition to a more resilient food system, to increase the nutritional value of the food that we produce, but then to also decrease the ecological footprint or food print, if you want, and to increase the farmer resiliency, the farmer who is technically the key person at the center of soil management and food production. So in order to get to this, it all starts for us with the soil. And I want to start with a voice that is not mine. It's a Native American proverb that says, we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we merely borrow it from our children. And that is the philosophy that we hear from many a farmer, where the farmer sees him or herself as a steward of the land, and where, it's good though that I don't need this one. That the farmer sees himself as a steward of the land, where the land is his laboratory, his ledger, is his legacy in a way. And so they generally don't talk about microbial density or about soil respiration. They know when the earth is alive and they know when it breathes. And so today when I was asked if I wanted to speak, I kind of in a blurb thought about soil as an asset class. Was right in the middle of my maternity leave, so hormones might have given me some burst, and then all of a sudden I started thinking, shoot, I need to fill that in. But it basically makes sense in a way for me, so I hope I can convey that message too, and you can challenge me afterwards. So I want to talk about soil as more than a substrate, more than a variable in a yield model, more than a carbon sink. I want to talk about soil as an asset, ecologically, economically, but also social and cultural, and how we, well, scientists, you then, not me, but investors that I do include myself in, consumer too, and farmers have a role in promoting and supporting the viability of our soils and reimagining our value in how to protect her and how to support her regeneration. So why do I consider soil to be an asset? Well, an asset is something that holds value and that can generate benefits in now and in the future. So we'll repeat that because it might be a new terminology. So an asset is something that holds value and it might generate benefits now and into the future. Now, soil, healthy soil, that is, fits that definition perfectly. From a biological perspective, it has huge microbial colonies, can sometimes rival the density of biodiversity in the rainforest. From a chemical perspective, there is nutrient storage, there's a huge complex system that is supported, and I will spare you my interpretation of the scientific terminology. And then from a physical perspective, it obviously also has water retention capacities, prevents erosion, and roots entire ecosystems. So in that regard, the soil for me and for us at the Nest does not just hold value, but it creates value. It is the driver of entire economies. And so there would not be any asset or any other assets to talk about if it weren't for the soil. And yet, despite our soil or our entire economies being based on the soil is still massively undervalued in public policy, in markets, and also, and I might not make many friends here with that statement, and also in some research objectives. Soil is undervalued, we came to realize, in our hearts and our minds, in both, where we think that if the soil runs out, that we will replace it by something else, that there will be a technological solution that will enable us to produce food rather than through the soil to something else. Well, let me tell you, that won't happen. It is highly unlikely, at least in my opinion. And for me, soil is a highly invaluable asset. And as a community, we need to start thinking about the soil as almost our friend, our next of kin, to take a more animist approach, because it is foundational to food systems. It is foundational to water security. It is foundational to biodiversity, and it is foundational to climate adaptation. So in short, I'm making a point in terms of treating soil as foundational for life. In that regard, I'm asking you to consider how you will help the soil, like how you will truly help her. From our perspective at the Nest, how we do that is by investing in her regeneration, in investing in the people that steward the land. It means channeling capital into regenerative agriculture, into agroecology, and into practices that stimulate soil health outcomes or soil health benefits. That requires science-based metrics to be able to link the financial performance to the impact outcomes and to the ecosystem outcomes. Some examples are, for example, soil health linked long-term incentives for land managers or farmers, agroecological transition funds. It's a whole mouthful. It's basically just a fund that finances transition to agroecology. And adjustments in lease incentives for farmers. There's funds that we see, some of which we have invested in, that take an approach in terms of yield split between, or yield risk, which means everything that the land brings you, in down cycles, the fund or the investor will share in the losses. And so the farmer is not the only one taking the risk there. So in that regard, policy and finance must follow this function. But the function must follow science, and science must follow the field. Now, my objective for following the field is why? Because a farmer knows soil differently. And in finance, we talk about assets, which I just mentioned, asset management in general, which has a hugely financial connotation. And so asset managers talk about portfolio, which basically is very virtual. It's listed on the stock exchange, or it is holding shares in different companies. Portfolio management, it talks about yield, it talks about chasing alpha. So lots of letters in the Greek alphabet. But for the soil, the so-called asset manager is that farmer. And where my interpretation of science, and again, it's very black and white, but it's more to incentivize the discussion and to do a bit of provocation, is that science measures the soil with algorithms and with sensors and models, where a farmer measures the soil by her boots. And so there is rigor in scientific observation. I do admit that, and I do realize, and I think that it's absolutely necessary. But there's also rigor in experience, in walking the same fields for 30 years, in seeing how cover crops change the texture of the soil, change the feel of the soil, change the smell of the soil. And so considering the soil as an asset class, for me, requires epistemic humility. Epistemic humility requires the recognition that our knowledge is always partial, and that other parties, farmers, indigenous communities, land stewards, hold value too, and that we need to take that into consideration. And where with the microscope sees one truth, those farmer boots see another. And epistemic humility is knowing that we need both, and that it's not because something does not show up in a lab report that it doesn't mean it isn't true. Because in my opinion, science that isn't listening is science that will not be applied. And if we want research to shape practice, to develop those science-based measurements, it must start with the people who live the very questions that we're trying to answer. That means participatory research, it means farmer-led trials, and it means open feedback data loops. It requires an open mind, and it requires flexibility of thought. It means going out into the land and looking further than carbon. In that regard, for me, it means taking into account multiple parameters, because if we consider soil just as how much carbon it can sequester or what amount of carbon it holds, we will risk missing the bigger picture, because the soil is too complex an ecosystem for one specific variable to just determine its value. And if we just take into account one specific value, then it also risks missing the bigger picture, and there's no holistic solution that can be addressed then. So therefore, at the Nest, we're advocating for a systemic, long-term approach, which is complex, which requires patience, a lot of patience, which is not really my strength from time to time, but I'm working on it. And taking into account not only the objective of the research, but it also requires taking into account the wider system that that research will operate in. Because in my opinion, credibility does not come from peer reviews. It comes from relevance. And so it requires indicators that make sense to laymen like me. I've tried many scientific papers, and I still have to sweat really hard in order to get the main messages out of it. Research timelines that reflect growing cycles, not grand cycles. And it requires decentralized open source monitoring tools, for which many of you are already striving, as I saw on the agenda. And there's many examples like the 1,000 Farms Initiative that are doing such beautiful work. So I'm kind of asking to build on the work of others and stand on the shoulders of others, where science does not need to remain in the lab, but needs to go out in the field next to the people that know how the soil smells. And where I'm at least always trying to remember that we're not just measuring numbers and variables, but we're actually mapping the future for next generations to come. So on that note, I would love to read to you a small text, and I promise that I'm done, that takes into account the philosophy behind it for a farmer. It's written by Karen Washington. She's an activist and farmer in the States, in the state of New York. And she writes, "Dear young farmer, I am writing this letter because I'm concerned of the future of agriculture. I see in your eyes the eagerness to grow food, but I also see the hesitation. Look, I know that farming is hard work, not a glamorous profession to say the least, but we have come a long way from the shame and shackles that haunted us a mere century ago. I say to you, young farmer, go with your instincts and your heart. Our ancestors have never left you. Listen closely to the beating of your heart, the rhythmic patterns of breathing, the tingling in your hands when you reach deep, deep into the soil. Never forget that you come from an agrarian people, people who knew how to grow food and take care of the land. It has been a symbiotic relationship, the love of land and Mother Earth. Listen in the early morning as the birds sing out loud, designating a new day. The dew lies softly on the earth and covers the plants. Smell the fresh air, crisp and cool. Yes, young farmer, you are one with the earth. What stories will you tell your young? How will they know of a people who were denied their 40 acres and a mule, but kept on defying the odds to find land and grow food? I'm getting old now, have fought many battles along the corridors of food and social justice, a mere pittance to those who continue to combat the evils of racism. And although you can't see the chains and shackles around your hands and feet, make no mistake, the trauma still exists. But you already knew that. From the first day you took your breath, you knew you were special. You knew that the road to success would be long and arduous. Like a tree bending in the wind, whose roots are strong, so too are yours. Young farmer, learn as much as you can about farming and life. Listen to your elders, because they are wise. They will tell you the secrets of growing food without chemicals or pesticides. They can smell and taste the soil to let you know if it's good for planting or not. Whatever you learn, share that knowledge with others. Whatever you grow, share with those who have less. Be prepared to meet the challenges ahead and know that you are not alone. So proud I am so that you have chosen to be a farmer. Go with my love and blessing, and always remember you stand on the shoulders of greatness, and your love for the land will never be denied. Love always, Mother Earth.